Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Speedway High School, our makeshift banquet hall for tonight, at our Top 10 recognition for the class of 2017. I'd like to begin by recognizing and thanking, first of all, our Speedway Lions Club. If you'll please stand, we'd like to give you a round of applause for sponsoring tonight's event. Next, I'd like to thank Airmark for hosting tonight's and producing and having the food for tonight. If you ladies would, and they're not here, unbelievable. I didn't expect that. But when they come in, we'll take a moment and thank them for everything they've done. They've prepared all day for tonight's meal. Next, I'd like to introduce our school board members. Please stand as I announce your name, and I ask that you all hold your applause until the entire group has been introduced. Dr. Terry Reed, Mr. Tom Smith, Mr. Luke Bickle, Mrs. Laura DeGay, and Mrs. Deborah Gonzalez. Please give them a round of applause. I'd like to thank our Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Patty Bach, and our Superintendent, Mr. Ken Hull, if you would, please. Thank you for everything you do. Next, I'd like to recognize Mr. Lucas Zartman, our Assistant Principal, Director of Student Services, please stand, Trenton Borum, and Counselor Chuck Bennett. If you would, please stand. And most importantly, the person that puts all this together, and that is Misty Davenport. If you would please stand up at this time. I know. Thank you, Miss Davenport, for all your work, and Miss Linda Baker. Well, tonight is a very special night for our students, educators, families, and our school corporation. This is the night that we honor our top students and, quite honestly, look around in a top school that we have accomplished this last year. Senior class of 2017, I'm so proud of your accomplishments, of each of you in this top 10. And the best part of my job is to listen to you articulate the passion towards an individual that has influenced you to reach your optimal potential. And tonight, I believe that we'll get a full dose of that. But before we begin, let's have our invocation. If Ms. Winterin, if you would please come forward, we'll have our invocation, then we'll begin our speeches.
Please bow your heads and join me in prayer. Dear God of all creation, we come before you today to give you honor and praise. You are worthy of praise. You are the source of all that is good. You are the source of all our blessings. Thank you for the gift of breath and the gift of life that we have been given today. We thank you for every soul that is present here today. We thank you for the opportunity to come together and gather. We ask for your hand of blessing in this ceremony. We ask that you engrave our names in your heart. We ask that you will guide and direct this ceremony so that it is full of beauty, success, and fulfillment. Thank you for seeing us through this program. For in your precious name I pray. Amen.
Thank you. Without further ado, we'll begin. If Zachary Woodlock and Mr. Joe Rush, if you would come up to the podium this time. Mr. Woodlock will be joining the United States Marine, and Mr. Joe Rush is a former former coach, newly married, got that in, and current teacher at Franklin Central. Zach Woodlock.
Day by day. Joe Rush is a man of many titles: son, brother, father, coach, educator, and as of Saturday, husband. But one that many fail to acknowledge is role model. He's a well-respected man with an act first, ask questions later kind of mentality. Many have asked, how does one prepare for the challenge of life? The answer is to look toward the people that will push you to succeed and accept nothing other than your best. I've known Coach Rush since I was a freshman. He's my football coach, for 3 years and my baseball coach for 1 year. Now, I'll admit at first, I was really intimidated by him. He was loud and in your face, and I just didn't know what to do. But you know what? I didn't let that hinder my pursuit for success. As time went on, I grew to realize that all of his volume came from his passion for the game. He hated to lose, and honest, who really likes to lose? He wouldn't be part of anything if people involved didn't give their all. He wouldn't accept being second best. He pushed us day after day, making us strive to be better than the competition. I recall during my freshman year, during baseball season, we traveled as a team to go play at a tournament. It was a chance for us to grow as a team and as a family. Coach Rush cracked jokes, and we were all having a great time. Next morning, he got up really early. For those of you that have seen the movie Tommy Boy, then you know he gave the famous line, "Housekeeping, we fluff pillow." But once we stepped out onto the field, it was game time. Coach Rush flipped from being a joker to a hype man. He was going around yelling and throwing his hands in the air. He even smashed a can on his head. All things aside, Joe Rush is a role model to me. He's a man of bravery and wit. There's a saying about respect. It's not enough to earn it once. You got to keep earning it day by day. Coach Rush has earned my respect every day, and one day I hope to have an impact on someone like Rush has to me. Coach, I want to thank you for all the time and effort you put into making us all better people all together and pushing us to greatness. I wish you the best of luck in life and in your career.
I was told I was supposed to stay under 1 minute, and that's kind of hard for me usually. But Zach, thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here in front of all you guys today. I can't tell you how much it means to me for me to be here. And I can't think of a better person to represent our country, the United States Marines.
Thank you, guys. Next is Victoria Winrin. She'll be attending Indiana University, studying pre-law, and Miss Allison McKay.
Sorry. Lady of the Torch. October 7, 2013, the very day it all started. I came into the school as a complete novice. Of course, it was only my 16th day in the United States of America. I felt very indifferent about this bright young lady whom I was introduced to and started off in a classroom. This was because I was not very used to being shown so much love, care, and attention from a supposed-to-be educator. And the enthusiasm and readiness to help was very unusual. This was you, Miss McKay. It has been 3 years and 4 months that you have been lighting my way, and I've never for once regretted that I met a guardian angel like you. I never will. The question of whether there is anything not to be admired about you is that which I am yet to answer. I admire you for everything, from your beauty, beguilingly combined with your brilliance, to your incredible sense of humor, to your kind-heartedness, to the smile you wear on your face every day, no matter the mood of the atmosphere, that brings joy, esperance, and life to my entire existence, to your scintillating personality as a whole. The knowledge that you wake up every morning with so much passion and zeal to be a source of encouragement to me. Probably unbeknownst to you, it's just dazzling, Ms. McKay. You're a tolerant and understanding person to the core. But the fact still remains that you're a disciplinarian. Your yes shall be a yes, and your no a no. I spent the critical developmental stage of my life in Nigeria. Therefore, the very things most students would despise about you are the things I most appreciate about you. Isn't it funny how I've never sat in your class for you to outrightly teach me any particular subject, yet I've learned everything from you? Do you think it is just out of the meanness of my heart and the laziness of my soul that I have taken your class all 4 years of my high school career? I'm yet to imagine a school day without you being in this scenario. From you, I have learned a handful, and I'm still filling my hands. You're the mother figure I look up to outside the comfort of my mother care at home. You never want me to be hurt. You never want me to be hurt or feel like I am being cheated. When I see you, I see flicks of hope. The point in time when I am around you is when I feel the most security in the entire building. I can remember vividly the very day I informed you that I did not get accepted into the college at the top of my scale of preference. I told you I had cried out all the tears in my eyes, and you said to me, maybe it is not just for you. Maybe it is meant to be that you'll be a Uzier. But you know, sometimes you just need to get out a good cry to feel some sense of relief. I think you're perfect, so cheer up. I felt so much confidence in myself that I could go try out for the right wrestling team right there and then. You're one of the few people I always rant and rave all my problems and life struggles upon, and you've never hesitated to offer your listening ears and your leaning shoulders to me. For every single time I uttered a negative statement, you had 2 positive statements to cover up for them. You always say, just remember, I love you, Victoria. It's all that matters. I said to you one day, Miss McKay, I am tired of my life. And you said, oh, come on, Victoria, don't say that. Just hang in there for a couple more months, you'll be fine. You said, learn to reward yourself by doing things that relieve stress. Relax. Take a long walk. Breathe. The next day, I received a Paris themed encouragement card that looks just as beautiful as yours. I'm planning to show that to my children. I will never forget all of these words of inspiration and motivation. They have pierced through the deepest parts of me and made me a better version of myself. I congratulate all of the special educators that are present here today. I also encourage you to try and do one thing. Try your possible best to create some kind of personal relationship with each and every one of your students and be keen to know what is going on in their lives outside of the school doors. Miss McKay did this today, and that is why she's here. Miss McKay, it was you that understood what it felt like to leave bits and pieces of my life behind in one place. And it was you who helped me pick up those beats to start all over again. Because of your never-ending support, compassion, and understanding, your love shall remain in my heart as long as I live.
Well, Victoria said a lot of nice things about me. She forgot to mention I'm a really ugly crier, so thanks. I'm really happy to be here tonight and to celebrate with Victoria. She's worked really, really hard. And I think if you really listen to what she said, I patted her on the back and gave her advice, but I think this year I haven't really been her teacher. I've just been her cheerleader because she didn't really need me, which is great, which makes me happy. And I know that because she's, except for maybe right now, both of us, normally very stoic and poised and very determined, and I know that she'll do really, really great things at IU. I'm very excited for her, so thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, ladies. Next is Josie Merritt. She'll be attending Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, IUPUI, and studying American Sign Language Interpreting. And her influential educator is Mr. Jacob Pachter, that is at Wabash College, but he was a former Speedway English Theater director. Come on up, Josie.
Happy birthday, Pachter. Look on every exit as being an entrance somewhere else. The player and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. As I exit high school and enter college, I must recall and appreciate all who took part in my education and extracurriculars. My teachers, counselors, coaches, administration, directors, and most importantly, Mr. Pachter. Senior year is when us graduates truly reflect upon who we are and what path we could take to become who we want to be. The more we grow into ourselves, the more society tends to push us into a mold of what it wants us to be, but not Pachter. Jacob Pachter nurtures difference. He doesn't tell kids who to be, but instead helps them feel confident in themselves and who they become. I never officially came out to Mr. Pachter, but when I introduced him to my girlfriend, he didn't do a double take. He didn't let out a surprised, "Oh," and he didn't have a look of disappointment I have received so many times in the past and still receive to this day. He treated us as a normal couple, and that spoke volumes to me. You see, I've received evil stares, insults, and even had someone complain to a police officer just for holding hands with my girlfriend. So I've dealt with some very closed-minded people that try to suppress my freedom of expression, such as changed lyrics in a musical I partook in. I always have my guard up in a society where I don't fit the mold, but never with Pachter. He has only acceptance and understanding, and you can see it in everything he does. When he directed the first play I performed in, I always noticed how he said, "I'm here to help if you want it, but if you have to decide for yourself if you want it. Otherwise, we're all just wasting our time." He doesn't force students to bend to his will. Instead, he creates a sense of drive within students to take their responsibilities and be independent in their work. And I truly admire him for that. You can tell that Pachter puts effort into connecting with the people around him. This one time, I jokingly stole Pachter's hat after the Top 10 ceremony that he nominated me for and then didn't show up to. And the next day, he got me my own hat from IUPUI, the college I'll be attending next year. Now, think about that for a second. He had to put in the time and effort to not only remember the school that I'm going to next year, but to actually go to the campus and buy that hat for me. And I think that speaks volumes to how he truly cares about the students he taught before he left for Wabash. You see, I've seen a lot of teachers leave and move on to better things while in high school, but having Mr. Pachter leave was probably the hardest. He is definitely a big influence on my life, and I hope to go into the interpreting world with as much acceptance and passion as Mr. Pachter showed those around him. You can bet with your life that I'm going to visit him at Wabash and tell him happy birthday every day, just like I did my junior year.
Josie, I was thinking about the first time that I met you, and I don't exactly remember what it is, but I think Mr. Shively and I were on parking lot duty, maybe your sophomore year, and I think your mom or dad or whichever brave soul drove you to school, and then instead of stopping to let you get out of the car nicely, they would just, I don't think you actually let them stop, you just had them keep going, you just try to jump out. And that was about a whole year of 7:47 in the morning. And I was like, well, I'm just going to get out of her way. So I think, I'm honored that you selected me. Thank you. I think that I was talking to Mr. Kurtz about this before, that the thing that is the biggest difference between working at a college and working at a high school is that in a high school, you see students every day. You have them touch your lives, and you have the opportunity to hopefully make a difference. And I got to do that in ways I didn't even know I was doing, so thank you.
Thank you. Next is Claire Shutter. She'll be attending Marymount Manhattan College in Theater Arts, and her influential educator is Mr. Lee Shively, current social studies teacher here at Speedway.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we are here to honor teachers who have impacted our lives, and I'm going to pay homage to Mr. Shively. I think everyone has a first impression of a teacher before they even have him in class, whether that's good or bad or intimidating or whatever it may be. I can honestly say that I had none of these preconceptions before I had Mr. Shively as a teacher, as I was completely unaware that he even existed. My entire freshman year, I did not see him once. I had friends who were sophomores at the time, which is the grade level Mr. Shively teaches, and they often talked about Mr. Shively and their AP US history assignments, but I had no idea who this man was. I was partially convinced he was some sort of urban legend like the Sasquatch or Walt Disney's frozen head. Every day I saw my sophomore friends disappear into room 154, and my 14-year-old mind could not seem to put two and two together. Then sophomore year rolled around. Sophomore year was a struggle, to say the least. Out of my 4 years of high school, I can say without a doubt in my mind that sophomore year was the most taxing. Being babied through school, we were dropped into the pit that was Deaver's pre-AP English 10, Mr. Riley's pre-AP Algebra 2, as well as AP US History with Mr. Shively. It was like we had been swimming in a kiddie pool all of our lives, and then we were dropped into the middle of the ocean, with a life vest made of lead. Now, it wasn't all bad. While Mr. Shively's class was definitely part of the reason that sophomore year was the struggle it was, he was definitely one of the things that made it more bearable. Between the stress of school and extracurricular activities, having a period to watch Mr. Shively make a fool of himself was a great comic relief, which I know is part of his design. And therein lies the beauty of Mr. Shively as a teacher and as a person. He didn't just see us as test scores. He cared about our learning more than he cared about his decorum or pride or anything like that. If it took watching a Jimmy Fallon skit to remember the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, or seeing how many times he could incorporate the word damn into his lesson based on the one named after our 31st president, he was willing to take those measures. He worked to keep us engaged. He wanted us to take something from his class, even if it wasn't a passing grade on the AP test. It could have been a lesson on time management, or how to properly write an essay, or just a generally clearer understanding of American history. Mr. Shively wants his students to succeed and does what he knows best to make that happen. And it is this quality that makes me dedicate this honor and my first presidential ballot to this red-blooded American, Shively Deaver 2020. Thank you.
Well, a couple reflections. First, I do perform hallway duty as part of my professional expectations. Clearly, we never cross paths. But in terms of being up here, it's a great honor for me. The 10 of you in here know how difficult it is to be with me for 183 days. She chose to do it for 2 years, having been back this year. But it is such an honor because I believe we're all born with certain gifts and talents, and if you've ever seen Claire perform in the theater and other arenas, you know she's very talented in that regard. But it didn't just stop there. One thing I did notice in sophomore year, and she touched on, was how much work she had to put in to achieve what she achieved. Being gifted is one thing, working hard is something totally different, and I saw that very much. And I think the third thing is, in this past year, being my teaching assistant, she's willing to help, whether that's making copies, running passes, things like that. she puts others first. And in teenagers, no offense, guys, that's not always a quality you see. And when you really think about all of that together, she really is a unique and special person. So it is a true honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Trevor Outlaw. He'll be attending Indiana University, studying international relations, and his influential educator is Mr. Robert Lindhorn.
Lord. Okay. There you go. Robert Lindhorn, you may be right wing, but you're still wrong. Speedway High School is an esteemed public school, and we see its esteem personified through the preeminence of its teachers. Speedway has a copious amount of teachers that excel in inspiring, supporting, and obviously educating. I have had the luxury of being able to partake in a number of their classes and been able to see these qualities brought forth in their daily lessons. For me, no other teacher exemplifies these qualities more than Robert Lindhorn. Prior to meeting Mr. Lindhorn, I had a slight fear of him. Every upperclassman had a horror story about the man. So when I matriculated into his class, I honestly was worried it would be another English class where I would loathe the teaching. But somehow, Lindhorn never did exemplify these preconceived notions of horror. In fact, he exceeded every possible expectation I had of him, which is why I chose him today to be my most influential educator. Mr. Lindhorn is an educator who does not view his students purely as pawns. He does not view us simply as numbers, nor simply as test scores. Instead, he treats his students as his peers and tries all he can to create an integrated and involved learning environment, despite being rebuffed from a variety of fronts by those unwilling to learn. He not only teaches the book, as an average teacher does, nor does he only foster discussion, as a good teacher does, but instead he inspires and provides avenues for further delving and introspection on a multitude of topics, as a great teacher does. Habitually, Lindhorn instills the seeds for discourse, creating an environment of mostly respectful debate, mostly. Lindhorn revels in this, for he knows that this is the goal of the teacher, to foster learning, not for a test, but to foster learning to satiate a student's pursuit of self-betterment. Lindhorn, despite his education from Ball State, was genuinely able to inspire me to go above and beyond what was required of me. In other classes, I needed to only simply coast and do the bare minimum. However, Lindhorn gave me this weird desire to actually try, to put forth all of my latent intelligence, usually in an effort to prove him wrong. Actually, in retrospect, I do believe that those driving force in my passion in this class to prove him wrong. Lindhorn and I have differing ideologies, to say the least. I am the bleeding heart liberal, and he is the staunch, rigid conservative. Almost every day after class, I would stay after during the mere 5-minute passing period, and that was granted to me, and use that time to either continue an argument from the previous day or to start an entirely new one. I'd put in work, extra work, to find statistics and find sources, all to force a singular concession from Lindhorn. And obtaining this concession from him created a sense of personal pride within me, although, albeit, I did have to give a few concessions of my own over time. I just want to finish this speech with one final thank you to Lindhorn. Thank you for inspiring me to try and to actually employ my full strength and effort into work that I am passionate about. Thank you for inspiring me to work for the federal government that you so dearly want to dismantle. Thank you for listening to my boasts at my highs, and thank you for listening to my woes at my lows. You are inspiring as you are unique. Thank you.
Well, Trevor, first of all, I would like to sincerely thank you. It is quite an honor to be selected, and I'm most appreciative. But I can't resist telling you a couple stories about him. Last year in AP Lang, now you referenced the fact that you were petrified, basically, of being in my class, which is not unusual. But you know what? That didn't last very long. Within a few weeks, he announced to me, he said, I won't get anything less than a 9 on your essays. every single one, and 9 is the highest score one can get. And I said, no, you won't. I said, first of all, to get a 9, your writing has to be sophisticated, not just convincing, but sophisticated in both language and in argumentation. He said, oh, yes, I will. Well, sure enough, the first paper that he wrote, he got a 9, and he did on the second as well. And so after a while, I thought, well, how can I mess with him a little bit? So I said, I'm just going to slap a 7 on the paper, which I did. I just slapped a 7 on it. And sure enough, he came up to my desk and he said, that's not a 7, that's a 9. And thus began our dialogue for the whole year. And in each and every case, we would have a dialogue about his essay. In fact, this year it has carried on, and in fact, I often will make a controversial remark in class, take on a persona I don't even agree with, but just to see if he's paying attention, because Trevor sometimes, he'll come in the room and he'll sit at my chair. And I'm not sure whether he's going to pay attention or not. But you know what? I might make a remark, and then the next day, as he referenced in his essay, he will come in, he says, Mr. Lenore, haven't you considered this survey? Isn't it true that? And he will start the dialogue, and between passing periods, before school, after school, during class sometimes. And as the year went on, this just continued, and we actually just ended up having a lot of respectful discussions and by the time the year was over. And so, Trevor, it just kind of reminds me of a statement George Bernard Shaw once said. He said, what we want are children in pursuit of knowledge, not knowledge in pursuit of children. And in fact, Trevor, you pursue knowledge. You pursue it for your own pleasures and your own purposes, but you do pursue it. I'm honored to have had discussions with you. I think you have enlightened me, and I very much appreciate this honor that you've given me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Abigail Thomas. She'll be attending IUPUI in Museum Sciences, and her influential educator is Mr. Jordan Deaver. If you guys would come on up.
You deserve a Dundee. Many people throughout high school and life in general enter and exit your life. However, few make a lasting impact such as Mr. Deaver has had on mine. The first interaction I ever had with him was when I was a freshman and he approached me about joining Spell Bowl and the academic team. I didn't even know he knew who I was, but he said, and this is a bit paraphrased, "You would have loved last year's academic team subject. It was about the 60s and the Beatles were in there just a little bit. I've heard you're into that kind of thing, and practices are every Thursday morning in room 235. If you'd like to join, we'd be glad to have you." For someone who I thought barely knew me, it was nice to see that someone saw potential in me, plus mentioning the Beatles always helps. This is something that fast forward to sophomore pre-AP English and out to my senior year has kept me motivated, focused, and passionate about what deep down I know I'm capable of. After having had Mr. Deaver in a classroom setting for pre-AP English and being his assistant this year, I've learned many things that at first seemed like nothing but goofy quips from a man who obviously loves to create a persona about himself. Number 1, Mr. Deaver would die for legumes, Times New Roman font, Contigo water bottles, and Pilot G2.38 pens. This has shown me that not only is Mr. Deaver passionate about some really weird stuff, but that it's important that you're at least passionate about something if it means a lot to you, regardless of how weird someone else might think it is. In my case, I would love to end up being a museum curator, and Mr. Deaver informed me earlier that he supports me and appreciates my passion for my dream, even though he hates museums. Number 2, every day is an interview. To become Mr. Deaver's TA and the newest member of Deaver Enterprises, I went through a lengthy interview process at the end of the last school year. I didn't know what to think of the process at first, but I now know that it tested my ambition to reach a goal that I have, even if it means doing things you don't want to do or don't entirely understand. In the end, you'll be proud you did your best and achieved your goal. And finally, number 3, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Not only do I have a tendency to be shy, but I have a natural tendency, thanks Mom and Dad, to try and be independent, which results in relentless stubbornness. This part of me appears in almost every aspect of my life, and especially with school. So hearing this advice from someone who I can always tell genuinely wants to help me meant a great deal to me. These words of wisdom come to mind nearly every day now, and they not only gave me a new perspective on myself, but made me realize I could never have a better mentor than Mr. Deaver. A large part of what has made my experience as a student at Speedway High School so enjoyable has been the opportunity to be one of the chosen few to be privy to the seemingly endless Deaver wisdom. I can say with confidence, I believe wholeheartedly the academic and life lessons I've learned from him will follow me through my life and into the next few exciting and intimidating years I look forward to at IUPUI. It's important we appreciate the educators who have undoubtedly helped us achieve the successes the 10 of us have thus far, and I'm truly honored that I was able to attend this event. In the words of Michael Scott from the show The Office, the Dundie Awards are about the best in every one of us. I believe this also applies to this event in every sense, and for that case, for all intents and purposes, Mr. Deaver, you deserve a Dundie.
Oh man, some of those things are pretty weird, but they are absolutely all true. My point 3A right here. So I owe Mr. Dorman credit there. He recruiting the academic team, so I didn't really know all that stuff about you, but Mr. Dorman told me, so I used it to my advantage. Persuasive appeals there. So, Abby talked about potential and seeing potential in people, and I think that's a big thing. A shy kid, which is what she also mentioned. She's also really stubborn. She didn't say that in there, that she really doesn't take my advice very often. So that's why I have to give her so much of it, and hope that one of those things she will take. I just say it about 10 different ways. But I do think, her potential in museum science, I've always said, find something that you love and find a way to monetize it. And if she can do that, curating Beatles artifacts or whatever, more power to her. So monetize your passion. She's passionate about that stuff. I support it 100%. I think that's what we're all supposed to do here, support kids and their passions. So thank you for this honor. It's great to be here. Couldn't ask for a better kid to be here with.
Moving along, our next person, our student, is Madison Moore. She'll be attending University of Kentucky in pre-law, and her influential educator is Mr. Nick Beard. Come on up.
Charlie Brown Christmas Special. It's tedious to imagine our lives as anything other than what they are now, to think back to times past, wonder what we would change given the ability, and contemplate how that would change the way our lives stand in the present. No amount of desire can allow us to turn back time and edit our lives. Luckily, we do have the ability to shape our future and ensure that our choices now reflect the people we want to be. Occasionally, some are blessed enough to meet another person who can serve as an inspiration as what to aspire to be and a force of will to help push forward when they're too tired to push themselves. I happen to be lucky enough to be one of those people. Admiration is typical of intellect and athleticism, but it is not typical to admire a person as a whole, for their actions, their drive, their passion, and their character. I stand before you today to attempt to put into words the mass admiration I have for my teacher, my coach, my mentor, my friend, and my everyday inspiration to be a better person. As my teacher, Mr. Beard has reignited an invigoration for learning that I thought I had long since lost. I don't remember the last time I was inspired to truly care about my learning experience before Mr. Beard became my teacher. I'd always loved learning, but I was pretty jaded by the whole system. I was no longer vested in the interest of furthering my mental capabilities, but in the interest of just getting through high school as quickly as possible. This is the mentality I had as I sat in my law education class the first day of my junior year. I was unaware that the teacher standing in front of me was about to transform my entire mindset. The environment he creates in his classroom is something I didn't realize I was missing out on until I experienced it myself. I cannot express the level of gratitude I have for unlocking my passion for learning and pushing me into allowing myself to always try my best and not just try to pass. The intensity and depth of actual care that he brings into not only his teaching, but his coaching and his involvement in student life in general continues to surprise me even well over a year later. In my entire education, I have only felt that level of actual care and vested interest in my success a few times. It's inspiring to see someone care as much about teaching me something as I am about learning it. He is unmatched in his capability to inject uncapped energy and excitement into his lessons, classroom, and everything else he does. I must point out especially the dedication Mr. Beard brought to his AP Economics class, as his rendering of this class helped me discover a passion for this subject that will now carry through my college years and beyond. The aspect of Mr. Beard's dedication to teaching that impresses me to no end and continually makes my respect for him grow as I witness it repeatedly and at great lengths is his unrelenting battle to not only teach the kids that want to learn, but to teach those that blatantly refuse to learn. There will always be students who lack the desire or motivation to try and learn, and they give up before even beginning. It's easier to just give up on these students, carry on without them, and just hope they don't disrupt. Not once in the 2 years, 4 classes I've had with Mr. Beard have I seen him give up on a single student, and that amazes me to my core. I've seen daily refusal to even pretend to pay attention, met with unbending will to help and teach. This type of relentlessness could inspire armies, and it has definitely inspired me to never give up on others or myself. As my mentor and my friend, Mr. Beard has offered me something I cannot express how deeply I appreciate: someone to believe in me. It's more than just support and an endless willingness to help me with any problem I can fathom to present him with. It is the unyielding belief that I can accomplish more than what I believe I can. This type of faith allowed me to stop being the type of person that was terrified to truly try in fear of failing, and helped me become the type of person who continues to try in spite of failing. He has taught me that in everything you do, it is best to give only your best. Mr. Beard is someone who I not only wants for me to succeed, but believes in my ability to succeed, no matter what, and that is something I cannot express enough gratitude for. Charlie Brown spent 2 seasons trying to teach children life lessons. You've spent 6 teaching me. As your time as my teacher comes to a close, I can only hope the life lessons you've taught me can allow me to inspire others to the depth you've inspired me. Thank you for making me into a better person, for teaching me, and for believing in me and never giving up.
It's my first time here, so I'd just like to say thank you to the Lions Club, the school board, and the administration for putting this on. As a young teacher, it really means a lot to me to be here tonight. I'd also like to thank my wife, who loans me out to the school for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes Saturdays, to work with these kids. But I'd especially like to thank Maddie for selecting me as her most inspirational educator. For 2 years, Maddie's been the pillar of my classroom and of the track team here at Speedway. I couldn't think of trying to do anything in this school without having Maddie on board. She demands so much and expects so much that it just encourages myself and others to meet that level of demand. Every day I showed up to work, I was excited to try to teach Maddie, because it was going to be a challenge, because Maddie wants so much from her education. She demands so much from her education. In my 2 years as an educator, as a young teacher, Maddie's done more for me in that time, preparing me to teach other kids that like her, that demand more, that want more. And there were times where if I didn't know what I was talking about, I was going to get steamrolled, and that happened a few times with Maddie. But you know what? That's what's important for me to learn. And it was important for her to show me that you need to know what you're doing, Nick, and you better know what you're talking about, because all these kids depend on you. And so, Maddie, I can't thank you enough for making myself a more effective educator for other teachers. You deserve everything you get out of life. I'm just so grateful I got to teach you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Cal Sajan. She'll be attending Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, studying biology. And her educator, inspirational educator, is Mrs. Becky Kilgore.
My road to success. I've known Mrs. Kilgore since my freshman year. She was my first and is my last math teacher of my high school years. At first impression, she can be seen as a little bit intimidating, but once you get to know her, her true self is on the contrary. She is the most persistent and caring and sometimes very comedic teacher I've ever met. Not only can I relate to her as a mom, but also as a teacher and a friend who genuinely cares about your success and education and pushes you to your full potential. Derivatives, integrals, and limits were math topics I never fathomed to exist, but of course, I was proven wrong in AP Calculus, and I can confidently say that they are not easy topics. Each individual topic was fairly easy and understandable, but once you put them all together, that's when it feels like you're reading a language you've never seen or heard before. However, I got through this arduous course, all thanks to Mrs. Kilgore and her daily encouragements, patience, and her candy bribes. Because of her, I was motivated to keep trying and put in bits of effort each day in class and after school. Even when I schedule my doctor's appointment, I tend to do my best to schedule around her class because I don't want to miss any of it, partially because I don't want to fall behind, but mostly because I enjoy learning from her. I greatly admire her teaching style and the way she is able to grasp all her students, regardless of their levels of intelligence or ability to retain information, and break down every problem into a more simple and understandable one. Because of her, I've learned not to be hesitant about asking for help, but also to put in, as she would say, consistent daily effort. I believe this is a valuable life lesson that I will continue to take with me in my journey to college, as it will pay off in the long run. Additionally, I've learned numerous of other life lessons, such as that at the end of every problem, there's a solution, and there are a multitude of routes one can take to get there, and that's completely okay. Mrs. Kilgore always encourages us to embrace the different way of thinking. As a result, she made me love learning math, and math itself became my favorite and best subject. One of my most persistent memories with Miss Kilgore was my freshman year when we were in a lockdown, hours after school, and she gave the whole class candies and chocolate to pass time until we were all out. So she eventually promised to buy us pizza and cracked a lot of jokes. But just the little things that she does makes everything more enjoyable and bearable. But nevertheless, in conclusion, I would like to thank you, Mrs. Kilgore, for being my most influential, effective, and admirable teacher I've ever had. I will take all that I've learned from you, academic and non-academic lessons, to guide me into my road for success. Thank you.
You have to understand that that lockdown was like the Thursday before Carb Day, and everybody thought they were getting out to have a 4-day weekend, and we made a sign on my chalkboard, I don't know, it was like 4:30, 4 o'clock, they're still sitting in my room. So it was an interesting situation. I can't thank Cal enough for her daily effort in my class. On my wall, there's a sign that says, "You don't have to be the best, just do your best." And she does that, day in, day out. We talk about best effort, best attitude, best work ethic. She does it every day. I don't have to worry about her spending time on calculus because she's always focused, she's determined. If we work in small groups, it doesn't matter who she's with, she's helping someone else, she's keeping everybody going, and she's just so much fun to work with. Obviously, she's very, very good. We have talked about consistent daily effort and best effort, and so it's very, very heartening to know that somebody heard it. Mr. Beard said, as a young teacher, this is quite an honor. I can tell you, even after you've been here a while, this still is quite an honor and quite a privilege to be here. So thank you. And parents, thank you. I get to work with great kids in a great community.
Thank you. Next is Deshaun Thompson. He'll be attending University of Chicago, studying biological sciences and pre-medicine. His influential educator is Mr. Derek Dorman.
Four legs good, two legs better. Oh dear, how to begin? Well, that is a very good question. This iconic line, usually followed by silence, is stated constantly by D Squared in response to the many questions of many students. This frustrates many students. However, the underlying effect of this response, I have learned, is to encourage students to think critically and find the answer themselves, as in the future there won't always be someone to answer the burning questions of these individuals. However, your great influence goes beyond your ability to make students think critically. He also managed to maintain overwhelming enthusiasm and excitement within his classroom to further engage students in the readings and activities. For example, while reading George Orwell's Animal Farm, he made attempts to mimic the sheep in the bleating of four legs good, two legs better. You were the beginning of my high school career, the beginning of my love for tennis, and the beginning of my success. Low in the middle of the wood, the folded leaf is wooed from out the bud, with winds upon the branch, and there grows green and broad and takes no care. Sun steeped at noon, and in the moon, nightly dew-fed, and turning yellow, falls and floats adown the air. This excerpt from Alfred Tennyson's Song of the Lotus Eaters expresses my true admiration. You became this towering tree that encouraged my growth as a leaf throughout high school. Your influence began as the gate to my intellectual success and continued as my coach, instilling in me a love for tennis as well as excellence. Your dominance over the court and classroom encouraged me to work to rise to dominance myself. Your towering presence and thundering voice encourages me to try to tower over my opponents. Your overwhelming optimism encourages me to always think positively. Undaunted, unparalleled, influential, Derek Dorman.
I'd like to think that I could parody the four legs good, two legs bad thing for you tonight, but I'll spare you. Three quick things. I want to echo something Mr. Beard said earlier about, needing to be prepared and be on your A game every day. I'm paraphrasing Mr. Beard, but I found myself coming back to work a little earlier from lunch. On the days, I had Deshaun in my fourth period class as a freshman, and you have to be prepared. His level of preparation for class every day, I'm sure every teacher in here would echo that, is exceptional. So I earned my paycheck when Deshaun was a freshman there, because he had to be that way. Secondly, I admire his courage, okay? As a freshman, there was a young man who, on the week of the musical, bailed. Deshaun stepped into, or continued his role, okay? And he also took on the role of the youngster who quit. That's a pretty bold thing for a freshman to do. That just shows tremendous volumes about his character. So that's pretty cool. But the character thing just continues to grow. It's listed there, he wants to go to the University of Chicago. Now, it was kind of a fun conversation in the fall. I kind of arm twisted him to death because I really wanted to see if he'd at least give DePaul a shot. Okay, I'm very passionate for that, unlike Wabash. And I have to do that for Mr. Pachter. The University of Chicago is a pretty doggone good school. And for Deshaun to put himself in a position to be able to go there, you have to be persistent at wanting that goal. I'm going to give you some insight on something that's going to come out in our school paper next week. I listened to a little interview that some of our kids did and Deshaun was one of the students. And he talked about the fact that he is looking forward to the next 12 years of school. I hope to make it through 12 more years of doing this teaching thing. But every day there's a big question there. So, Deshaun, I admire your willingness to put yourself out there, your courage. I admire your daily preparations. And I admire your persistence. Those qualities are going to carry you a long way, and I appreciate being here. And I want to thank all the parties that put this on. It's a wonderful event. So, thanks, Deshaun.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Jenna Childress. She'll be attending Indiana University, studying environmental policy and management. Her influential educator is Mr. Tim Kurtz.
Embracing the environment. Before my sophomore year ever started, I was already dreading one of my classes, AP Biology. The previous year in pre-AP Bio, I had done well enough, but never actually enjoyed the class or any of the content. Luckily, that year the class began with a substitute since there was not yet a teacher who had been selected. It was a class I was planning on dropping anyway, so I wasn't too worried. About a week into the school year, our new teacher had finally been chosen. At first I wasn't sure, but I began to like Mr. Kurtz more each day, and I even began to enjoy biology. He taught unlike any other teacher that I'd had before, mixing lectures with humor to keep everyone engaged and anecdotes to explain topics in further detail. What I enjoyed most, however, was that he was not so much concerned with our grades as he was with us learning the content. Because of that, it was easier to learn, and it felt like some of the stress of an AP class had been removed. While I may not have done as well as in that class as I probably could have, I still learned enough to pass the exam, and more importantly, have even remembered a large majority of what I learned 2 years later. Now I'm in Mr. Kurtz's AP Environmental Science class. Since his first year here, he has been pushing to get it, and he finally did. His passion for this class and the subject as a whole really shows. So much so that it has even rubbed off on me. Because of this class and the way in which he has taught it, I have realized my shared passion for the environment and finally found which career path I would like to go down. With only a few months left in my senior year, I was able to decide on majoring in environmental management, something that allows me to combine everything that I love, taking massive amounts of pressure off of me. This class has also helped me to see the world in a way that is bigger than myself and those within a close proximity, teaching me to consider every aspect that plays into something. In effect, it has shown me more about the world than any other class has. This year, I have also served as Mr. Kurtz's TA. This is probably my favorite part of the school day. No matter what mood I'm in the morning, he is able to cheer me up. He always has a story to tell me or some kind of a joke to make me laugh, and I only occasionally have to spend an hour in the copy room making packets for a class about the environment. Above all, the thing I admire most about Mr. Kurtz is how he was able to change my view on education. I went from someone who did well out of fear of failing to someone who did well because they enjoyed to learn. This helped me transition into a different person in regards to education and has helped me become more successful in the classroom as well as more responsible in general. He has made me think about the world in a way I never had previously, and I will always be thankful that I was able to have him as my teacher.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Jenna for having me stand in because that guy she described sounds pretty good. I hope I meet him someday. And again, as I look around and look at all the talent, I've had the opportunity to sit and listen to this, my first. And Nick, it's nice for another young teacher to get up here and spend some time. Actually, I probably could have taught Nick. But seeing that these young people are a tapestry from the people that started at kindergarten to the people that carry the vision and provide us with the opportunities is amazing. And it's nice to be a part of that. Even we don't know how big our brush strokes are, but we all do have a hand in that, and that's really important. Having left someplace after 18 years and come here a week late, as you mentioned, I walked in that day, and I do remember it clearly because they said, now you won't be in the class until the next day. So after about an hour, they said, well, we really don't have anything for you to do. Might as well walk into AP Bio. So that's how I started. I walked in, and they all looked at me, and I looked at them, and it was kind of like a caged cat, and we kind of parried and dodged, and we managed to get through it. But I do remember specifically with Jenna, you don't remember this maybe. I was doing a lesson and I gave a lesson. I thought it was really, really good. And then I looked up and she gave me an eye roll. And, do you remember that? Probably, oh, I do. And I went back and it hurt my feelings, and because I thought I knew everything. And so I went back and the next night I went back and I prepped it again. And I came back in the next day and go, oh, I forgot a few things. And then I did that, and it's that kind of drive and that kind of the fact that she didn't allow herself to be short, to be short at any time, the kind that pushed people. And that's the kind I appreciated. And as we've grown, and especially in AP Environmental, she is no longer a student, she is a colleague. And I throw things back and forth. How good is this question? It's not very good. So then I go back and I correct it a lot when she corrects me. So I really appreciate that, and that kind of a relationship that comes around just very, very rarely, because I have taught more than a day or two. But I will appreciate it and will cherish it. And again, thank everybody for this opportunity, and especially Jenna.
Well, we have ran out of students. Those are all 10 of our students, our top 10. Let's give a big round of applause for all of our students first, all the hard work they've done. At this time, I'm going to ask if Airmark will come on in and set up the rest of the food. Ladies, if you come on, if you would like to, that's your cue. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause for the ladies for putting the food that we're ready to eat. Parents, thank you, and family members, thank you for being here today. This is just such a great honor to come and share some testimony and how they feel about their educators and teachers. Thank you for expressing how you feel towards your students. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what makes Speedway great. And I'd like to thank the Lions Club, the community members for jumping on board on this opportunity. Again, thank you for everything that you guys did. This is everyone together, coming together to honor and celebrate the success of our students. And that is just phenomenal. Again, thank you, school board members, Mr. Hull, Mrs. Bach, and all other administrators that are here tonight and today. As it's raining still, as I hear it coming down, I think it will stop next week sometime. But needless to say, it's time to eat, so please enjoy your salads and bread, and as soon as we have the line set up, I'll dismiss tables, and we'll go ahead and have a delicious dinner. Thank you.